All right, Dagen and Marian, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Jeff.
So I've been reading The Angler's Coast. It's a book by Russell Chatham, and he is fishing on the north coast of California. And he's fly fishing, and it's a couple hours north of San Francisco. And he's talking about catching 30-pound king salmon on the fly rod in fresh water. And it just makes me think about what we've lost and how sad that is that book is like a time capsule and all those classic writers are like a time capsule, and I think, man, it's all gone. And then I think it's not gone. It's at Bristol Bay, and people like Dagen were able to grow up there. So what was it like growing up in like an angler's paradise that's still in existence?
It's amazing. Yeah, I feel really lucky. I've spent every summer of my life outside of, I think, five. I'm 32, and every summer I've spent out in Bristol Bay. Most of the time it's been in Naknek, and since our family ventured into the lodge business, now I get to spend a lot of time on the Kwijak River as well in the village of Igiagig.
And you're a third generation commercial fisherman?
Fourth generation.
Fourth generation. Wow, that's pretty wild. What did you like better? Do you like the guiding thing that you're doing or the commercial fishing, or can you really
Yes.
compare? Yeah, but it's a tie. It's a tie for first.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool to be on both sides of it. Growing up commercial fishing, I would say that like that is definitely like my main source of income. The fly fishing lodge is truly a passion project. It's something that we love and we ventured into, but commercial fishing is kind of where I put hay in the barn.
Mhm.
So they both kind of have a different space in my mind, even I guess thinking of it that way too. Like commercial fishing is work to me, where guiding is kind of play.
Nice. What have you seen in the years that you've been there, and maybe what have your family noticed as far as trends when it comes to fish? Because it seems like around the state, kings are kind of low, but Bristol Bay seems to just still be getting tons and tons of sockeye, and the returns still seem to be fairly good. Maybe not so much with kings, but what have you noticed in your time there and your family's time there?
I've definitely noticed the runs getting bigger, and as well as I've seen a lot of fluctuations in price. I remember when I was really young, I was probably 8. I remember tenders, the boats that we would offload our fish to and sell them, they'd have 50 cents painted on a piece of plywood and their whatever cannery the name was, and driving past all those. And now you don't see that as much. You don't see prices. We didn't have a price posted prior to the season for a long time until this past year, actually. So I've seen a lot of different trends with price and the way canneries manage things, but I've also seen run size increase. And I think a lot of that has to do with the increased kind of global temperatures that we're having. It helps the sockeye salmon a lot. Their food source it flourishes in that, and then from that we've seen increased numbers. Marian can probably speak a little bit more to the science maybe than I can, but I've definitely seen bigger run sizes and added consistency to those run sizes as well, especially in the last 10 years. It's
Mhm.
been phenomenal.
Yeah, because the sockeye doesn't rely on herring and a lot of those bait fish as much as more your kings and coho. I know down here in
Yeah.
southeast, people are talking about kind of the absence of herring in some of these areas, and even the Sitka has got great herring. Those populations are really good, but people are concerned about herring because obviously everything depends on herring, or most of the salmon depend on herring, and so yeah, those warmer temperatures for something that's not eating a lot of those bait fish, it could be great for them.
Yeah, we've definitely seen the positive sides of their food source doing well and the runs being bigger.
Mhm. When you're going out, what's like a good day when people think about getting a lot of fish or making a lot of money? It's a very ambiguous term 50 cents. That can be tough. So in like one set, how many fish are you getting? What's the poundage and what can you expect? Put a number if you can.
I would consider if you can do 10,000 pounds a day, you're going to have a good season. And if you can do more than that every day, then you'll have more icing on your cake. I saw a couple of the biggest sets, specific or individual sets this past year than I've ever seen. We had a 20,000 pound set, and we had a 16,000 pound set. And so doing rough math, that's roughly like 4,000, 5,000 fish.
Wow.
If
That's
you're doing
crazy.
it just off of a 5 pound average, which isn't always exact, but
So with the good runs of sockeye, does it kind of spread people out, or are people sitting right on top of each other?
no, yeah, it's the Wild West. There's no lanes of traffic. Yeah, that's a dog eat dog thing over there. It can get crazy.
Hmm. Are people fairly they kind of understand that's just the way it is, and so even though they're really aggressive, they're not going out of their way to be dangerous, or is it pretty
Uh,
mean?
it depends who it is. There's boats that carry a reputation for good or bad in regards to that, but there's definitely some unspoken kind of ethics out there that you try and abide by, and when someone doesn't, then that's typically when you kind of see the game of people towing the line a little further, and then the other guy taking a turn to move it a little further, and yeah,
Hmm.
seen some crazy stuff.
So what about the fly fishing season, the guiding? Is that like your time to just take a breath and you're really enjoying that, or how does that differ from the commercial fishing?
Definitely is a lot more laid back. It truly our operation is a family operation, and it truly is just a passion project. We've had some awesome opportunities to host some big groups with the youth, but then when it comes to guiding, like I got the chance to go out with Marian and her husband Kyle this past fall, and it's just fun. I
Mhm.
mean, we do a lot of do-it-yourself trips with our clients, and so a lot of the times I'm I'm there at the lodge, and I make sure that our clients are taken care of. But then on the side of that, I get to go fish as well. And
Nice.
once the boxes are checked,
Mhm. When did you start the lodge?
we purchased it in 2018. We closed on it in summer of 2018.
Oh, so perfect timing for COVID. So you just start getting some
Yeah,
momentum, and then COVID shuts it down. How was that? Was
yeah.
that like, oh, this is a sign we got to just commercial fish because this is crazy?
Yeah, it was a wild time for everybody. Didn't matter where you were, it affected you in some way. But yeah, we don't host a ton of people though, so it didn't affect us all that much, to be honest.
Mm,
In fact, it would kind of allowed us to grow an even deeper passion and love for the area because there was so fewer people that we got to kind of take advantage of it and have a lot of fun. And we brought our family out there for the opener in June after the river's closed there until June 8th, until from like middle of April till June 8th. And then we fished a lot with our family. And that specific opener was really fun. It was just our family on the river. We can go anywhere we wanted, had no competition. And so it was really memorable, actually.
nice. Yeah, like some people just like to have keep that and preserve that smaller mom and pop type feeling, and not everything has to be marketed to and have a TikTok and have so much just getting the name out there. Sometimes it's just nice to have a facility that you enjoy. You want to run it exactly like you do, and you don't feel that pressure to be the next huge, massive lodge and just kind of do things as you want to.
Yeah, and that's kind of our model. We don't want to overpressure the system because we care about it. Partly that's part of it, and then we also just enjoy the more one-to-one relation that we've been able to have with our clients. We're not spread thin. We get to spend as much time as the clients or us want to spend with each other, and but we didn't buy the lodge to with the idea of running an operation like this. We just wanted a cabin, and
Mm.
so basically we got a really big cabin that we are able to now meet new friends through or have some of our current friends come and visit us.
Nice. Do you close it up for the winter, or is there someone there?
We close it up, yeah. So, and we only operate in the month of September into October, really.
Okay.
We're we're very limited in our operation, mostly due to the commercial season, and not like in order to really make a profitable business in the lodge business, like you have to be taking part in that salmon run and putting clients on that. So we still commercial fish and don't have any plans to stop doing that. And then after that's done, we go and see what fish we missed.
Nice. Any issues with bears or anything? You come back after a whole bunch of months and, someone had left a candy bar out and a bear got in there, or do you get it nailed up pretty tight so there's no, surprises?
All until this year. It was really, really good. And then this past winter, we did have a break in our lodge. There's three lodges on our side of the river, and all three of them got broken into in some fashion.
Hmm.
We didn't have too much damage, luckily. And then the only time it's ever happened when we've been there as well, but we had a bear break in while we were there,
Oh, wow.
super early hours of the morning through the night, something. But yeah, it broke our sliding door, broke the
Mm.
pane of glass and came inside, which was surprising. But it didn't actually step foot. I don't know if it like pawed up on the glass and then came down on all the shards of glass and it spooked it or what, or maybe the sound, it had to have been really loud, but it didn't venture in past the sliding door. So Yeah, it was kind of odd, but it was crazy. We've never had any issues in 7 or so years of us running that place, and then this year we had a couple.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it makes for a better story, right? Like it's really,
Yeah.
really broken in. It's an official bona fide lodge if you had a bear break in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're there. Check the box.
So what did you get involved with the Bristol Bay Fly Fishing Guide and Academy?
So the first year we hosted that was 2021, I believe. Let me think. Does that ring a bell, Marian? I'm trying to think because we had it scheduled and then it got canceled because of COVID the first time.
That does sound correct. Yeah.
So I think it got canceled in 2020 and then we hosted in 2021. And then we hosted it again in 2024.
And what does that
And that was where I met Marian.
what does that entail? Like what's the hosting? Who's there? What's the main purpose of that?
The main purpose of that is to teach the youth in the area of Bristol Bay how to be guides and lodge owners and hosts. The kids that grow up in the Bristol Bay region, the most prevalent things that they'll see for career paths would be being a guide or a lodge host or some sort of hand at a lodge or commercial fishing. Like the rivers that run through that area, like that's the resource that it mainly brings in terms of jobs and careers outside of maybe the inner workings of their villages and keeping things running there. And so this is a great opportunity for the youth in that area. They see it, they grow up around it their whole lives, and it gives them an opportunity to learn how they could chase that career if they choose to.
Mhm.
And so they take in applications, Trout Unlimited does, as well as I can't remember all that helps. I know BB&C has a little part in it, but Marian can speak to that side. But they take in applications from youth and they prioritize youth that have ties to the area and try and teach these kids how they could have an awesome career.
That's cool. Mary, do you have anything to fill in on your end of that?
Yeah. So the academy was started in 2008, and it's run every year except for the pandemic. It's a week-long program, totally free to the participants. Typically has between 10 and 15 students between the ages like 14 and 21. And it's just a really incredible opportunity for them to have a crash course education in sport fishing, but really like guiding and tourism. And, that industry has grown exponentially in Bristol Bay in recent years. And, I'm sure Dagen can speak to this, but we've seen a real growth in bear viewing in Bristol Bay. Obviously sport fishing for both salmon harvest and catch and release for trout as well. And the academy was founded with the idea to make sure that local communities were involved in this growing industry and that local kids had opportunities available to them. And so kids can come out for 2 years in a row. We cap it at 2 years, but they have an opportunity to really be mentored by some incredible teachers. We have people who've been, within the sport fishing community in Bristol Bay for decades and decades. People like Nancy Morris Lyons, who owns Bear Trail Lodge, who's one of our lead instructors. We have Tristan Cheney, who is a local from Dillingham, who, him and Dagen have a lot in common and are good friends, where they're both involved in the commercial and sport fish side of Bristol Bay. And, there's these people who've had incredible success in the industry who are there to teach and mentor these students. And it's not just, sport fishing guides. There are, quite a few instructors who have biologist backgrounds, and they can, talk to the kids about all the different ways that they can have a career path that is really linked with the health of the fishery and the lands and the waters of Bristol Bay. And so it's about creating sustainable employment opportunities for the people who live within Bristol Bay. And those, employment opportunities, help create these incredible stewards of the lands and waters. And we've seen that with so many of our graduates.
How far does that expand? Because the Bristol Bay region has a good amount of communities that are kind of peppered around there, but there's not really an extensive road network. So, how many different villages were represented there, and how'd they get around?
We charter a lot of planes. We have kids from every corner of Bristol Bay, and that also includes shareholders and descendants who don't currently reside within Alaska. Like, we brought kids up from the lower 48, and it's all dependent upon who the applicant is, what their story is, what their connection to the region is. But we probably the biggest expense for the academy is definitely airfare, getting everybody there. It's costly and difficult in remote Alaska, but it's so worth it. And thankfully we have a huge list of partners. Certainly not just Trout Unlimited. We work really closely with the Bristol Bay Heritage Land Trust, United Tribes of Bristol Bay Native Corporation. Many of the state and federal agencies within Alaska support it as well. We have private donors like Orvis who support the program. So it's such a group effort and a collaborative effort to create a really once in a lifetime opportunity for these kids.
It's awesome. About how many total students? Because you have a couple of those around the state, right? I think there was one in Angoon, or is that a slightly different program, or is that under the same umbrella?
Yeah, same umbrella. So this year we had our second Guide Academy in the Tongass. So we have gotten a lot of interest from a lot of different parts of the state. People who've seen the success of the program in Bristol Bay and who wanted to replicate that elsewhere. So this is the second year that we've brought it to the Tongass. The whole host of new partners down there. And it's about the same kind of class size, that like 10 to 15 students per year. We keep it really intimate to make sure that they're getting a lot of one-on-one education, and really it's creating these lasting mentorships as well with the instructors who are there, who will go on and continue to support the growth and development of these students well beyond the week-long academy.
Cool. So
it's really cool.
Oh, go ahead.
If I could, the coolest students I think to me are the ones that are shareholders that don't live in the region, and for some of them it's their first time seeing Bristol Bay, and those kids just have such a impactful experience. I feel it's really eye-opening. And the Guide Academy, we've hosted that twice, but we've also hosted the Bristol Bay Native Corporation's Culture Camp, which isn't fishing related at all. And those are like the coolest things that we've done at our lodge for sure.
Mm-hmm.
When I was back in Klawock to substitute teach when I moved up, we had a field day. And so I took a van of kids to the river, and it's the Klawock River, which is like in Klawock. It's right there. And there were kids who'd never fished before. And I said, "Oh, you'd never fly fished before?" And they said, "No, never fished." I thought, "You're 12 years old. And this river is right here. You can walk to it from town. But if you don't have a mentor, if you don't have a dad, or you don't have an uncle or an auntie or a mom or someone to take you there, you just never go." And it's shocking that you can have that disconnect. I think people in the lower 48 just assume that every person in Alaska, every kid grows up fishing and hunting and everything, but that's not always true. And you get a lot of kids that buy into just the TikTok world and think that that's what life is. And you have the great medicinal properties of just being outside and being around the wilderness and caring about something and the ecology and caring about the sustainability of that. And it's such a great opportunity for kids to be involved in that.
When the Guide Academy was started, I wasn't there for the first cohort, but I would be surprised if any of those kids had ever touched a fly rod before. And that was, part of the creation of the academy. Nancy, our lead instructor, she runs a lodge on the Naknek. She resides there year round. She's, a basketball referee, really embedded within the community. So she was starting to introduce, kids in the community to fly fishing, which, culturally, I'd say most, if not all of the indigenous cultures in Alaska, like catch and release fishing is something that is very foreign to the indigenous cultures within our state. And it was not something that was so, I think, readily accepted by those communities. But the Guide Academy has come a long way in demonstrating the opportunity within this industry, especially, in these like remote areas where, it could be a very large percentage of the local jobs. but it's also helped to kind of like break down some of those cultural barriers as well, where some of these students are realizing like, okay, culturally, like we don't play with our food and release it. This is about subsistence, it's survival. But, for a lot of the anglers out there, fly fishing is born out of a real deep connection and respect for these waters and these fish. And so I think that's helped really, open a lot of people's eyes kind of both ways in regards to what all, fly fishing encompasses and how that opportunity exists within these communities.
Mhm. So going forward, it seems like that's a really successful, great thing. You got good runs. It's such a pristine, intact ecosystem. Even though there's communities there, it's a very light intensity, I guess. But as we know, as our thirst for technology and all those sort of things continues to grow, what are some of the threats going forward that might disrupt the future of that area?
Yeah, well, any Alaskan who is listening to this podcast and most, the anglers and outdoors people in the lower 48 as well are absolutely aware of, the 20-year battle that Bristol Bay has been locked in to defend their incredible fishery from the threat of industrial scale mining. We've seen some pretty significant safeguards from the federal government that have put up in an initial line of defense. But right now we have a really incredible opportunity with the Alaska legislature to create lasting safeguards for the Bristol Bay Fisheries Reserve. Last year in the spring, Representative Edgemond and Josephson introduced a bill to safeguard the Bristol Bay Fisheries Reserve from metallic sulfide mining. And the reserve itself was created in 1972 by the legislature. It spans like all the major salmon producing rivers in Bristol Bay, which, we're talking about the world's most productive wild salmon fishery that produces, over half of our global sockeye harvest. And in, a world where a lot of these runs are not as productive anymore, we're seeing like some record returns for sockeye in the region. So, the ecological importance is incredible. The economic importance is incredible. We're talking about 15,000 jobs, $2.2 billion of annual economic, a huge, huge portion of Alaska's economy. So back in 1972, under the leadership of Jay Hammond, who was the Senate president at the time, later became governor, they had the incredible foresight to create the Bristol Bay Fisheries Reserve and block oil and gas development from the region. At that time, they wanted to, monitor metallic sulfide mining. So the current law requires the Alaska legislature to permit any metallic sulfide mine in the region. But, in the past 20 years, the fight that Bristol Bay has been in to defend its waters, we've seen countless, science demonstrating that this type of mining is incompatible with salmon habitat. This type of mining is incompatible in a region where the majority of the water table is sitting 6 feet below the ground. And it's crisscrossed with endless rivers and streams and lakes. So House Bill 233, which would permanently prohibit metallic sulfide mining within the reserve, is a response to that science and a continuation of the protections that the state has already enacted going way back to the 70s.
Yeah, it's difficult conversation to have because a lot of people think that if you are against large scale industrial mining that you think that energy can just be created with magic, and that's not true. It's there you can be for mining but not for every single mine in every single area because you don't really have
Yeah.
a balance. It's a trade-off. You're trading one resource for another. And when it comes to industrial scale mining, it doesn't grow back. Like a forest that you log can grow back. It might not be as healthy, but it can grow back. Like you don't grow back these areas that are mined.
Yeah, and all the science that we've seen come out of the effort to, have mining in Bristol Bay over the last 20 years has demonstrated that's incompatible. So you're exactly right, Jeff. It's not no mines. It's, you know, no mines in the places where they've been deemed scientifically incompatible. And when you're talking about trading out a sustainable resource that has, like fed, the indigenous communities there for millennia, driven their culture, has had, very robust commercial fishing industry that's come out of it, that's had an incredibly, productive sport fishing and tourism industry that's come out of it as well. And that, combined industry, that's $15,000, 15,000 jobs and $2.2 billion. So when you're talking about swapping it out, like the numbers don't make sense.
Mhm.
It is trading one resource that has a limited lifespan with limited jobs that has been scientifically proven to degrade the really robust natural resource that is sustainable.
Mhm. Dagan, what was it like growing up in that kind of atmosphere? Like, did you always feel that there was this pending potential doom, or did you not worry about it? But growing up there, you had to be thinking about it as these sort of things are discussed.
Yeah, no, I mean, it kinda looms over you, being all the time and money and effort that my family has put into the businesses that we have in the area. It definitely looms in the back of your mind. You're always I've always been a glass half full kinda guy, but there's been more trying times in recent years, I feel, than others, where it's been harder to maybe maintain that half full mentality. But yeah, it absolutely looms over you a bit.
What would either one of you say to someone who says our need for technology and minerals and mining like that supersedes something like fish? What would you say to those sort of alternatives? Like what else? You mentioned some great science there. I don't know. Do you have like a concise two sentence or one sentence thing, or how would you go about engaging with someone who wanted to talk? Because sometimes people don't want to talk about these things. Sometimes it's they are hardlined and they won't listen. But there's a lot of people in the middle who are like, oh, this is kind of conflicted. I'm not really sure where else we would do these sort of things. Do you have a line for that? That's a
Who wants to go
tough,
first?
tough question on the fly.
I mean, I guess what comes to mind for me, having lived out there and partook in the resource that is there on such a consistent basis, is that it is consistent. It's there year in, year out, and it's something that you can rely on into perpetuity if we continue to manage it in a healthy manner. Where these finite, large scale mines, like they're finite, they have a finish line. They won't be there forever. The effects would be there forever, but the the resource would not.
Mhm.
And some places are too precious to lose. And in Bristol Bay, when we're talking about safeguarding the fishery, we're talking about the people of Bristol Bay and the people of Alaska. So, it's not just fish, it's the countless Alaskan families and businesses like Dagen's who rely on this sustainable resource for their livelihoods, make up a huge portion of the state's economy. So, it's the fish, but it's so much more.
Mhm.
It's everything they represent and, the ecosystem and economies and cultures and livelihoods that they power.
Yeah. I don't think that people understand kind of what it looks like. Every year that people come up on the cruise ships, they look around and they just think it's crazy. Where's the lights in between? I had a friend from New York come up and visit one summer, and we were driving to a Forest Service cabin over on Prince of Wales Island, and we got out of town about a mile, and he was like, "Where are the streetlights?" I'm like, "Matt, we're out of town. There's no, like, linking of town between town. It's not just nonstop lights and freeways. Like, we are out here." And got to the Forest Service cabin, and it was my buddy Matt's birthday, and his mom had called our home and asked for the phone number for the cabin because, again, your mindset when you're being in New York is that, okay, if you're staying at a lake cabin, it's a cabin that has a phone. So why can't I call my son for his birthday? So that what people expect when it comes to this is a region that really no one lives at, but there's a lot of people who live there, and until you see what it is and see what would be destroyed is just I think it's unfathomable because people assume that maybe most of the world is already looks like the East Coast, where it's you have patches of land or you have these expansive areas that aren't really valuable. Like there's some prairie sections where it's just nothing really out there. But the magnitude of Alaska and these regions, it would be an absolute shame to just fork it over to foreign mining companies.
Yeah, and Alaskans know this, and, we did a recent poll. 95% of Alaskans support long-term safeguards for Bristol Bay, and, that's across, Republicans and independents and Democrats, and we've had some incredible support from the lower 48 in recent years, when we were working to get safeguards at the federal level and just, comment periods where people were overwhelmingly speaking against it, but Alaska is a very pro-development state. And so, the 20-year conversation around mining in Bristol Bay did not start out with 95% support. That's for sure. It started out with locals who were concerned, who were, hearing some pitches about proposed development and who were like, what is this about? And as they, raised the alarm, that conversation has spread. And, the science and public opinion has continued to evolve. But now, that we know the full, repercussions that could come of this, we have that incredible amount of state-based support. And that, I mean, that's huge to, a state that, prior to Bristol Bay is not saying to no to any mining proposals anywhere. And I think that really speaks to the significance of the region and its importance, to our state and to the world.
Mhm. How long have you been with Trout Unlimited?
I started in 21. I'm coming up on my 5-year anniversary this spring, actually.
How has like there are a lot more tools available to people. So you're talking about the last 20 years and the emergence of the social media, YouTubes, and there's just so many different tools that are available to get the message out to people, but can also be used on the other side to kind of manipulate things. So how
Yeah.
has social media, the internet, podcast, all those things helped educate people, and how has it maybe been a detriment because everything can work both ways?
Yeah, it's been incredibly helpful. We wouldn't have had the incredible turnout that we have had for, every comment period that the federal government has held for Bristol Bay without, the tools of digital organizing at our disposal, because this is a place where many Alaskans have never been, honestly, let alone people from the lower 48. So being able to widely share the images of Bristol Bay that, you know, some people may never see, but, they dream about, has been hugely influential. And there's been a couple kind of milestones in, the fight. We have like the red gold video, that was huge in getting the word out about the threats to Bristol Bay. But more recently, even something like Fat Bear Week, like
Mm.
that's blown. It's huge. It's everywhere, like any national news outlet or morning show during Fat Bear Week is giving like daily updates. And, that's an incredible form of outreach because those bears are fat on salmon.
Right. Yeah.
They're congregating there for a reason. And so being able to share content like that of just these incredible corners of Alaska that have these salmon runs that are just chock full the whole stream, these 30-inch trophy rainbow trout that are feeding on them, these incredible predators, bears that are feeding on them, showing that to the rest of Alaska who might not be able to get there themselves, and the rest of the world has been a huge part of our fight.
Mhm. As far as now, we'll get to the really, really good stuff here. So for those 30-inch rainbows, I see, I see. Yeah, you're wearing a sage shirt. So are you a sage fly rod guy? Is that your preferred rod?
I have a couple Sages. I have a couple others from different companies as well. I wouldn't say that I'm smitten to just
Mm.
one, but I do enjoy the wands that Sage makes.
So if you're headed there and you could only take one rod, what's your rod? What's your reel? What weight? What length? What line? What leader? All and then one fly. What's that entire setup going? So in case someone is going shopping right now, in case they think for Valentine's Day they're getting a Bristol Bay fly rod setup, what should they ask for?
You would buy a 7/8 weight switch rod, 10 foot 8 from Beulah, and then you would pair it with a Nautilus CCFX2, but you'd have to put a little bit of felt inside of the spool so that your running line doesn't squeak out, and I'd put a two-hand setup on it. I'd fish it to swing flies.
Okay, Marian.
I will say I agree with Dagen here because I fished with that rod of his this fall, and then I promptly bought one for myself immediately afterwards. And then my husband and I have been fighting over it, him trying to take it every time he fishes without me. And it's like, okay, you can take it, but if you break it, we're gonna have problems. And the incredible thing about that rod is just its versatility. So fished it, double-handed swinging flies, but for a lot of our Alaska trout rivers, you're talking about fishing a bead under an indicator for a good part of the year, and you can do that with that rod as well. So it's really so versatile, and I think just casts like a dream. So yeah, shout out Beulah.
What would be the advantage of the switch rod versus a single-handed rod? If someone really, really loved their single-handed rod, obviously they could bring it, but I mean, I have a 1010 Echo switch, and I really love it for steelhead and whatnot, but why up there, and at what point, what sold you on the two-handed rod?
The two-handed rod, specifically switch rods, and especially around that length, like the 10 foot 8, it's not even 11 foot. You can single hand cast that rod with a proper line setup. In fact, Marian has good experience on using a kind of a line that kind of can do a little bit of go between fishing from a boat with an indicator with that rod. So it's really versatile. It gives you a little more reach from the boat, a little bit more mending capability if you're using indicators. But then if you would like to two-hand fish and you would like to swing flies, then it is totally set up for that. Not to say you can't do that with a single hand rod, but you can do it more efficiently with two-hand practice.
Mhm.
Yeah, just getting that distance, casting it with two hands. And I really got a crash course in spay fishing with Dagen this fall. And I, was playing around with his spay rods and switch rods. And what I really loved, like, the spay rod is just like, it's specific water that you're fishing it with, and just the length affects how you fight the fish.
Mm.
And I love that the switch is kind of just a nice middle of the road where you can cast it two-handed and get some like wicked distance off of it. But when you're fighting fish, it doesn't so much feel like you're fighting fish on a spay rod. And I just kind of prefer like that shorter length for like line control for me, and then with fighting the fish as well.
Mm. What about line?
So line gets really technical when it comes to your two-hand, your spay, and your switch setups. You have to have proper grain weights and lengths of heads. So I carry a wallet of heads with me everywhere I go, and sometimes I'm fishing multi-density stuff if I'm trying to get deeper, or fishing just a straight floating setup to fish a little higher in the water column. So I try and be prepared, but finding your correct grain window on your rod is the most important thing when it comes to your 2-hand rods. So on my 10-foot 8-weight Beulah or 10-foot 8-inch Beulah, I use a 450 grain Scientific Angler. It's their Edge. It's short. There's other lines that work on that rod, but that's the one that I've found that I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Dagen is such a gear junkie and so knowledgeable. You could have a whole other podcast where you talk about it the entire time, and he would love it.
He says it with such authority. It's like, that's it. Drop the mic. Period. End of sentence.
Yeah, and yeah, we'll have to. Hopefully, we can meet in person sometime, and maybe plan to share some water somewhere. And I'll open up the tackle box there, and you'll see there's a lot of stuff going on in there.
What about flies? Are you? I was casting just a huge Dalai Lama for kings up in Juneau with my switch rod, and wind picks up a little bit, and you're just really chucking it, and you just hear the Dalai Lama come by the ear, and you just, oh, okay, it went by. You put your hood up, but that's just like a little bit of fabric, and it seems like the hook would just go through it and just embed the fabric, and even without a barb, it's just going to be brutal. But
yeah,
kind of
it's not even the hook that I worry about. It's the cannonball on the front of those Dalai Lamas. Those carry some force. Yeah, the old chuck and duck, Kenai chuck and duck. I fish a lot of various patterns of streamers. I fish a lot of weightless flies though, and try and hone in on the proper sink tip. And I think they swim a little bit better. There's times where I feel like you need weight, and so I have weighted flies with me at all times, but I've found in recent years that I do fish a lot more weightless flies. In the fall, I fish a lot of flush. Typically, I'll have about 4 or 5 rods rigged in the boat ready to go. One bead rod that gets picked up probably 10 times all fall, and then 4 different, probably 2-hand setups that have different sink tips or different shooting heads that have some sinking rate to them or some way to change it from one to the other. And I always have some sort of flesh fly, and then I have a black fly to resort to if I feel I need it.
Just behind my laptop here on my desk is the fly that I got my personal best rainbow on, a Dagen Tide. It's a flesh fly, and that reminds me every day of why we're in this fight to protect Bristol Bay.
Do you like keeping the flies? Like, do they go into a place of reverence or memorial? I've done that where I've kept the fly because that was the fly that I got, my biggest brown trout or whatever on. Then I think, man, that fly should be fished. And the proper way to appreciate the fly is to fish it until it's completely destroyed by the teeth of fish. Do you have that, whatever, give reverence to a fly, and do you retire flies in a place of honor?
I do. In fact, as soon as Marian caught that fish, we netted this fish. We released it. I grabbed a rod and I immediately clipped it off and said, "Here you go." So, I mean, there's a time and a place. I don't do it for just any fish or any moment, but that was a monumental moment, especially for that trip and for her and for me too. It was awesome. It was such a cool moment to share that, yeah, she needed that fly. And I did the same thing with my mom. My mom had a hilarious reaction on the Kviak. We were fishing and she had a really tough day. That earlier into that day, she lost 2 really good fish, and to the point where she was like pretty distraught, like really upset, asking like, what am I doing wrong? Like, why do I keep losing these fish? And in the end, sometimes the fish are just gonna outdo you a little bit, or something happens out of your control. And so talking her just through this, and then we go to a different spot and she hooks into a really good fish. And I didn't really totally quantify at the time how good this fish was. At first, like, she's hooked in, she says, "Hey Dagen, I think I need a net." And when we got it kind of close to us, a lot of times one of the first signs when you're going to go net this fish that it's truly a big fish is where you see the line enter the water and then you see the tail. And the tip of the tail is going to be out of the water as it's trying to keep its head down, and that you're trying to pull it up, and so its tail is breaking the surface, and you can see the distance between the two. I was like, oh my goodness, this is a real fish. And so I get really quiet. I didn't want to like say anything that made her any more nervous than she already was. She knew it was a decent fish, but I don't think she quite knew how big it was. And we netted this fish. It was pandemonium. We take a photo, we release it, and then I clipped the fly off, and then I just put it in my pocket. And she goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, we're keeping that fly to remember this moment. I have multiple of that exact same pattern. Like I tie these flies, and that's another part for me too, is like I tie almost every fly that I fish now that I can easily recreate the exact same thing and not feel like I'm missing out. Like, oh crap, can't get to the fly shop for X amount of time. Like it's not that problem for me. It's just, and I'm a sentimental person, maybe more than I need to be, and so I like those little keepsakes.
Nice.
Yeah, I love having this fly on my desk every day. It's right next to a bullet that I pulled out of a mountain goat that I
Mm.
shot, and it just, like, remind me, like, why I do this work and, the opportunities that Alaskans and all our visitors have because of, the work to conserve this habitat, and it keeps me going. And that moment was particularly memorable. Dagen and I had probably like the best 30 minutes of fishing that I've ever experienced in my life. And we had a kind of a short trip and we got there, we're fishing beads a little bit when we got out, and there was a lot of guides on the river who were still fishing beads, but the swing bite was just starting to turn on. And we're like, you know what? We're gonna swing it the whole time. Like, let's see what happens. And, that was my first time really like fishing with a spay rod. And, I was trying to like stick out this like new kind of casting and, just swinging the whole time and resisting the urge to just like throw on a bead
Mm.
and catch some fish. And I had hooked in a few and not like landed any, trophy fish that we were really out there for, love all the fish that I catch, was having a great time. But, people go to Bristol Bay for those big trout.
Right.
And we were just about to have to leave for the airport to fly home. And I was like, swinging into this spot in this like big old trout that just like kept like bumping it and not committing and not committing and not committing. And like Dagen's just watching me here, you get like so frustrated and I'm resisting the like hook set. And it's like, okay, like this is it for me. It's not going to happen. We have to leave for the airport. And my husband was downstream of us, and Dagen's like, well, we gotta fish down a Kyle.
Mm.
So we're like, okay. And we had to be off the river like 15 minutes, and I just hooked into this incredible fish. And it like, sometimes like you can feel the bump a couple times and they're really not committing. And then sometimes you swing into a fish and it's like way out in the middle of the channel before you even know what the hell's going on. And it just, ripped my line. Incredible fight. My personal best rainbow trout. Amazing. We're celebrating, clip the fly, we're like, taking shots. And then we're like, well, we gotta keep fishing. Like, how far can we push this? And then 15 minutes later, Dagen hooks into, was that your personal best or like up there?
No, it's up there though. It was
It's up
close.
there. Maybe like
But yeah, it's like a
some
dozen casts. Yeah.
incredible fish. And we're just having the time of our lives. And we're like, can we miss this flight? And then, a family of bears stroll out on the bank, and it's this sow with 3 cubs, brown bears, and like, you know, second year cubs. So just giant family of bears just frolicking in the grass, in the water. And we're just like sitting there like, this is Bristol Bay.
Mm.
Like, this is why people come here. This is why people work so hard to protect it. It's an incredible place. And to just have an experience like that, like truly the most exciting 30 minutes of fishing that I've ever experienced in my entire life. So for a fly like that, like that's going on the desk.
Yeah, oh
That's
yeah,
not
for sure.
yeah.
So in closing here, what would you recommend for people? How can they help? How can they get, what can they do? Closing thoughts.
Yeah. Thanks for teeing that up. So I work for Trout Unlimited Alaska. We've been working to safeguard Bristol Bay for 20 years. The best way to stay connected with us is online, talking about all those digital tools that we have at our disposal now. We run the Save Bristol Bay program. So you can go to savebristolbay.org or follow Save Bristol Bay Instagram or Facebook. And that's the best way to stay up to date on everything that's happening. And on that website, you can find it through our socials as well. But right now we have a petition where we're just demonstrating Alaskan support for House Bill 233. So, those 95% of Alaskans who do support those long-term safeguards, get on savebristolbay.org, sign the petition. That way we can demonstrate that to our senators and representatives and show them truly this is the breadth of support. This is the future that Alaskans want to see for our most productive wild salmon fishery.
Dagen, you got a closer?
I think getting behind like the fight with Trout Unlimited has helped me a lot because it keeps me in the loop when I follow their pages, and it allows me to stay up to kind of speed of what's going on. Even spending all the time that I do out there, all the science and all the specifics that Marian mentioned, just us talking right now, like those are the things that I get updated upon when I follow their outlets. And so I just follow their outlets, and I try, and when I have the opportunity or see an opportunity to share what they're sharing, I try and put it into my own community and use my own outreach where I can and when I can. So
awesome.
And I think that one of the best things that especially locals, but get out to Bristol Bay, go experience it. If you go experience it, you will immediately feel the connection to the area and just how important that area is and how special it is.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for being on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Jeff.
See you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for listening. Please share. And if you found today's conversation useful, you can go deeper with my writing on Substack. That's where I expand on these ideas from the show, share essays, reporting, and things I'm thinking about in real time. You can find it at From the 49th on Substack. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.